Hey there folks, welcome to this video. My name is Cavan. If you haven't seen my content before, I usually talk about motorsport, politics, and sort of the area in which they overlap. And that's become quite a prevalent conversation again in the past year or so. And in particular, with regards to Formula 1, which is probably why you're here today. Now, Formula 1, or at least a lot of people around it, are talking about social media blackouts. Now, this is influenced by campaigns going on in the footballing world. For example, the English Premier League and the English Football Association, the FA, where teams and leagues are having a blackout as a kind of stand against racism. So they're not posting anything on social media over the course of what, here in the UK, is a bank holiday weekend. So that's a lengthier weekend, and it's a full round of fixtures that they're not posting for. And the idea is, by being silent about this, they can draw attention to anti-racism campaigns. I mean, you see the racist abuse that players such as Marcus Rashford get on social media. And especially in the aftermath of things like the return in prominence of the Black Lives Matter movement, it is largely black players being targeted, though players are targeted for any other kind of protected characteristics, not just their ethnicity, but it could be their sexuality. It could be a whole host of different things, religion, for example. But in Formula 1, the message is sort of changed. Well, let me read you what Formula 1 put up. F1 is wholly committed to combating any form of discrimination, online or otherwise. We support the actions of the Premier League and other sporting bodies and athletes in highlighting that more must be done to eradicate online abuse that they are receiving directly. We continue to work with all platforms and our own audiences to promote respect and positive values and put a stop to racism. Well, let's talk a bit more about this, shall we? So F1 itself isn't doing the boycott. None of the 10 teams are doing this kind of boycott of social media. But I've gone through and I've looked at the drivers and their social media platforms, and I'm talking about this as of 6 PM on Friday. So this boycott should already be underway, and let me talk you through the drivers. By and large, a lot of them have said that they're going to do it. There are a few drivers that haven't. One is Sergio Perez, another one is Sebastian Vettel, who, well, he doesn't have social media. Lance Stroll hasn't said anything, nor have Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, Kimi Raikkonen, or Antonio Giovinazzi. All of the others have put out messages saying that they're not going to be posting on social media. Most of them something to do with ending abuse, and in only rare cases, talk about racism. And let's talk about this a little bit more, and in particular in regards to some drivers. Because one of the big things on this channel that I've talked about is the We Racist Want displays, or the End Racism displays as it was last season, where drivers have 27 seconds to do a gesture that they feel is appropriate, and by and large, like half or most of the grid kneels. But a lot of them don't. And I want to take a moment to talk about that a bit more, because in particular for one driver, Ferrari Charles Leclerc, this flies in the face of what he says he stands for. Because Charles Leclerc, his attitude's changed. He took part in the Blackout Tuesday last year, which was where people who made content online said they weren't going to post on social media for the day. And it was supposed to highlight Black Lives Matter. Leclerc then decided not to kneel last season, saying that he doesn't believe in symbolic gestures. Then what's this? I expect Charles to kneel this weekend, and if not, he's being hypocritical. But then he's been criticised in the past for supposedly liking tweets that talk about conspiracy theories with regards to the Black Lives Matter movement, so I wouldn't be surprised. Sergio Perez, he's somebody who has said that he supports this movement, well, generally the kind of anti-racism movements. I'm surprised he hasn't said anything. Carlos Sainz, the man who said, I am a free man who will decide how I choose to decide, decided not to kneel last season, despite having backlash about a joke he made in a sponsor video that was considered racist. And then the karting centre owned by his dad had accusations of racism when it had an advert that used blackface. Yeah, I'm not surprised that Sainz, whose family allegedly have ties to the far right, not going to be saying anything. Alonso, I don't know. Like Kimi Raikkonen isn't like the biggest out there for social media. As for their own kind of personal politics, they don't talk about them. They've kind of made them clear in the past. I mean, there was controversy a few years ago when Alonso and Sainz, for that matter, showed up to the Spanish Grand Prix. The Spanish Grand Prix takes place in Catalonia, which is its own region within Spain and has its own particular societal identities with a Spanish flag, which could be considered insensitive. Raikkonen shows up to paddock with the Iron Cross on a mask. Part of collaboration with a American chopper company, one that the owner has allegedly had ties to the far right, so that opens up its own discussion. Giovinazzi, I don't know. One of the discussions last year with regards to the end racism stuff and drivers not kneeling was supposedly Fiat Group put pressure on Ferrari and Alfa Romeo drivers not to do it. And then Vettel said, nope, you guys are firing me, I'll do what I want. And not only was he one of the biggest advocates for drivers kneeling, he then did it at every race, apart from, I don't think he showed up at Monza. Him and Lewis said that they were too busy going to the toilet. And let's talk a bit more about Formula 1. Because one of the kinds of content comments that I've seen is people saying, yet we still race in Saudi Arabia. Yet we still race in Russia. Yet we still race in... and the list goes on. There were ones like Bahrain, China, and one that I saw, which many people didn't really think about. Turkey, where F1 will be returning, and has already in the past week announced that it's returning to, replacing Canada. In my Turkish Grand Prix video, I said that having Canada seen as, which would probably be arguably one of the biggest bastions of the We Race One message, replaced by Turkey, a place where the way that the government rules and the way the laws are in place are just, they fly in the face of We Race One. Let's just say it didn't make much sense. But then, how far do you go with this? I mean, I've done these kinds of videos before, so a lot of them will be linked in the description below. But you could argue that Hungary would also be implicated in these problems. Brazil. You could even make case to say the likes of the US and the UK. And then let's talk about the term online abuse and online hate. Because people like Nikita Mazepin used it. Mazepin, who received a lot of abuse online because he uploaded himself groping a woman to Instagram. Or supposedly she did, but we don't really know. All we know is he filmed a video of himself groping a woman. That ended up on his Instagram. And yeah, this in regards to Mazepin is in addition to a long list of incidents including assaulting Callum Ilott, for example. The problem is, when you talk about things like online abuse, it's a very vague term. As are messages such as end racism or we race as one. And they're intentionally vague. Because online hate and holding someone to account, well, they can vary. Like, for me, me constantly criticising a lot of drivers for their attitude, so Max Verstappen, and Portugal's a good example. Last year at Portugal, he used ableist and racist slurs against Lance Stroll. I've criticised him for that routinely. Somebody might consider that online abuse or hatred. It's about holding someone to account when they've signed up to a message that says they're against racism or against discrimination. And it's doing more of a job than F1 is doing. And that, for some people, would be considered abuse, and you could argue that a person like Mazepin might think that me bringing up his transgressions could be considered online hate or abuse. I mean, not that I presume any one of the 20 F1 drivers will be watching this. F1 always needs to be better and do better, and to be honest, the fact they're doing these symbolic messages, it's something. In terms of actual tangible things going forward, F1 still hasn't really done anything. A lot of it has been relying on other people to try and make those moves, and some people have. Lewis Hamilton is in particular a great bastion of this. He's someone who has pushed for change and reform where he can. And he's the greatest driver of all time, so he has some ability to do it, but he can't. He doesn't have the pull that all 20 drivers at one go would have. So this is a start, and as a mark of respect in regards to these principles, I expect all of these drivers who've said they're posting this to kneel on Sunday. Because, it's a symbolic gesture. A stand against abuse, against racism. So if they do really believe what they've signed up to here, if they really believe that, and if they really agree to those messages, they will kneel. Because it is symbolic. It isn't a tangible policy. But those who've railed against symbolic gestures in the past have posted this. Obviously, they've had a change of heart. Let's see on Sunday. Thank you for watching.